Good evening. Today is Monday, February 15th, the day after the last Sunday after Pentecost, or if you prefer, the last Sunday before Lent. And our gospel reading on this Sunday before Lent begins is the Transfiguration. In this year B, we hear Mark's version. So hear these words from Mark chapter 9, verses 2 through 9. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my Son, the Beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. I have 2 meditations for you this evening. The first and shorter one is by Michael Casey, who is a Cistercian monk in Tarawara, Australia. And he talks about the Transfiguration and refers to traditional icons of the Transfiguration. I have 2 pictures for you. Here is one, which is quite traditional. And here is a more recent one. So Michael Casey's meditation. It's entitled Delight, Fright, Flight. In standard icons of the Transfiguration, mostly following the 6th century representation in the apse of St. Catherine's Monastery on Sinai, there is a clear division between the top half and the lower. In the upper portion of the icon, the glorified Jesus is shown accompanied by Moses and Elijah. Beneath this, the 3 disciples are depicted, each in a distinctive attitude. Peter is shown gazing upward in an embodiment of his words, "It is good for us to be here." Another disciple is shown confused and falling away, often depicted as losing a sandal in the process. The third is beginning to run away. 3 responses: delight, fright, flight. Whenever we are touched by an outreaching of the spiritual world, our response is not dissimilar to that of the disciples. We are filled with joy, or we are thrown into confusion at this manifestation of a reality beyond our previous experience, or we are overcome by apprehension or even dread, and, like Jonah, we run away. "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man." Perhaps we experience all 3 responses simultaneously or in sequence. It is clear that we are out of our depths and floundering. When God calls out to us, we are not to hide in the bushes like Adam and Eve, but to say like the boy Samuel, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." Knowing God's goodness, we must stare down our fear, allow our agitated thoughts to settle, and placidly expose ourselves to the mystery that has come upon us. "Lord, it is good for me to be here. Hide not your face from me." The second meditation is by Mary Ann McKibben Dana. This is a bit more humorous. Longtime improv comedy teacher Billy Merritt claims that there are 3 types of improvisers: the pirate, the straight man or woman, and the ninja. The pirate is the one we think of when we imagine an improviser. This is the zany one, fearless and unpredictable, willing to do or say anything in order to get a scene going. John Belushi, at his Belushiest, was a pirate. When I lead improv workshops for church groups, I like to ask, who was Jesus' best pirate? Many groups answer instantly with one voice, Peter. Peter is always full of grand gestures. When Peter sees Jesus transfigured on the mountain, he wants to go right to work, building dwellings so that they can stay up there and bask in the wonderful feelings. When he tries to rebuff Jesus for washing his feet and Jesus chastises him, he changes his tune. Okay, Jesus, wash my whole body instead. And when the disciples are fishing together after the resurrection and they see Jesus standing on the beach, we know who jumps into the water and swims in to meet him, rather than just taking the boat to shore. That go for broke attitude traces back to today's passage. Immediately prior to this, Jesus has asked, who do you say that I am? And Peter responds, the Messiah. Barely 3 verses later, Peter is rebuking him, rebuking the Messiah. Jesus is having none of it. Get behind me, Satan. Though notably, he does not blanch at the fact of the pushback so much as the content. You are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. I have to admire Peter's sheer audacity to argue with, to reproach even, the person he only moments ago identified as the anointed one for whom countless generations have been waiting and yearning. That takes some nerve. I'm reminded of the meme that floats around the ultra-running community. Courage is knowing it might hurt and doing it anyway. Stupidity is the same thing, and that's why it's hard. We can't blame Peter too much for being confused. Good teaching relies on a combination of showing and telling. And up till now, Jesus has been engaged in a lot of showing, feeding 5,000 people, walking on water, healing the sick. Even the teachings of Jesus to this point have been focused on parables, with very little about who Jesus is or his explicit mission. I'm reminded of a preaching professor who would try to help her students rely more on showing than telling. I absorbed the lesson so zealously that my early sermons became beautiful but impenetrable works of poetry prose. I remember one bit of written feedback. Yes, we want to show people the mysteries of the gospel more than tell them, but sometimes, Marianne, you just need to say it. Yes, she used all caps. Here, Jesus says it, laying out the path for those who would follow him. It's a familiar call to discipleship, repeated in one form or another in each of the Gospels. But the 4 accounts differ. According to Matthew, Jesus assures us that those who lose their life will find it, Matthew 10:39. Luke says we will keep it, Luke 17:33. And John says we will keep it for eternal life, John 12:25. Mark's Jesus goes a step further. He is not a finders keepers kind of guy. Our lives are not simply misplaced items needing to be retrieved, nor are they things to be preserved, whether now or in the life to come. For Mark's Jesus, we are hopelessly lost without God, and when we lose our life for Christ, we will save it. We will be rescued from grave danger and harsh afflictions, delivered from the very throes of death. Spirituality is not something we dabble in for personal enlightenment. For Christians, a relationship with Jesus Christ is a matter of life and death. Why is it that every Christian sanctuary has his cross at the focal point, asked Pastor Paul Shoup, while our own crosses are nowhere symbolized? If we're honest, many of us really don't want this kind of saving. We'd like to continue living as we currently do, just happier. More faithfully would be fine so long as we remain comfortable. We'd rather not be transformed, but we're willing to be improved. We're not sure about being saved, but enhanced? Yes, please. In her book, How to Lead When You Don't Know Where You're Going, Susan Beaumont writes about a member of her home church, Anna B. Quick, who through her steadfastness kept the small congregation afloat during long periods without a pastor more than a century ago. Every Sunday she would come to the rundown church building, unlock the doors, turn on the lights, and keep vigil in the sanctuary just in case someone showed up. She filed the annual paperwork to keep the church a legal entity. Over time, conditions changed, and the church began to thrive again. At least that's how the story was told. When a recent pastor dug into the details, he discovered that things changed only after Quick and a few others started giving boldly and sacrificially of their time and money to hire a pastor, tear down the old building, and raise money for a new facility and new ministries. Quick and others denied themselves, took up their cross, and followed where it led, not to some remote mission field, but to a profound offering of self in the name of following Jesus. Richard Rohr writes, "Now is no time for an academic solidarity with the world. Real solidarity needs to be felt and suffered. That's the real meaning of the word suffer, to allow someone else's pain to influence us in a real way. We need to move beyond our own personal feelings and take in the whole." Self-improvement has its place, but Jesus promises something much deeper if we're willing to give ourselves to it. I wish you a pleasant evening.